Welcome back to the Keeping It Real Frank podcast, episode 52. Episode 52. Shout out to everybody that's been tapped in. Shout out to everybody that's been tuned in. I definitely appreciate the support. Now, if this is your first time checking out my podcast, basically I give you the 5 dope songs that I've been vibing for the week. Along with that, I give you NFL and NBA predictions. This week, we're going to stick with the NFL. We got the AFC Championships. The Cincinnati Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Philadelphia Eagles versus the San Francisco 49ers. Who y'all got? It's definitely going to be some wild stuff happening this weekend. Some good football. And you came to the right podcast if you want to hear some dope songs and some dope predictions when it comes to this football playoff talk. Let's get straight into it, though. You already see what's on the screen. Coming in at number 5 on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast. French Montana. Can't Stop. Won't Stop. Remix. Check this out.
Montana, this is the remix. You hear the remix on the radio. You know I sniped her from a video. She said I'm busy, I don't pay no attention. I had the curve that she subbed me on her mentions. Brinks truck, coke boys, bad boy. I done fuck more bitches than Floyd. He's a slut, he's a hoe, he's a freak. Fuck the actress and the bartender same week. LA party, me and Big took the same route. I had Nia Long, Megan in the same house. I fuck my main bitch with my side piece. Haters want me out the game like I'm Kyrie. Ashley in the car dash, and I got bricks off. Ashley, Montana sniper like Chris Paul. Hit it from the back, let your man munch on you. Baby, that don't mean I don't got a crush on you.
Can't stop, won't stop, bad boy. Always upgrading from my last one.
All right. That was number 5 song coming in on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast, episode 52. Shout out to French Montana. Can't Stop, Won't Stop, Bad Boy. And then at number 4 on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast. Shout out to that boy Lil Durk. This song was called Hanging with the Wolves. Now, if I was Lil Durk, I'd be careful what I name my songs, because Young Thug was just hanging with the wolves, and now he hanging in jail, man. Just some food for thought. Again, this is the number 4 track on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast, Lil Durk, Hanging with the Wolves. Check it out, man.
They in my business, they tryna treat me like a menace, they tryna turn me down. You know I'm different, I'm walking around with my skinnies, I'm standing run down. Saying he stayed with a nigga, had got off the table, so we had to calm down. Come to the rack with a rat, you think I'm dramatic, them niggas get shot down. Went out of town, they said had a warrant for murder, that shit gotta die down. I'm like, ta-da, nigga here put up his work, that nigga had got out. Can't have nobody around, can't have no thotty around, cause niggas gon' bail out. When he was ballin', I had to go sit out, I wait on my turn before we had fell out. And I was still on my ground, ain't had nobody around, I'm fighting assault. I had a deadly weapon, I had a Smith & Wesson, but I got caught. I got sand for all my cases, you know damn well he getting me on. Better do hair and nails, you better go pull off a scale and get me out. On this street shit and that time I ain't get caught. I had a best friend with a best friend, she a lesbian or dope.
That's all I got with this track, man. Again, shout out to that boy Lil Durk coming in at number 4 on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast, Lil Durk, Hanging with the Wolves. Now we down to the last 3 tracks on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast. Coming in at number 3 on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast, shout out to that boy Gucci Mane, Kodak Black. This track is called King Snipe. They both sniped on this track, I can't even lie. Whenever you got Kodak and Gucci on the same track, you know it's going to be a hit. They definitely deliver with the bars, the hook, the visuals is everything. I ain't going to do too much talking. Again, this is the number 3 track on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast, Gucci Mane featuring Kodak Black, King Snipe. Check it out.
Fucking shoot a bitch cause I'm on point like I'm a dot. I swap me a body for a swap. Put a bag right on this top. I got murder all in my eyes. You see it, it's torture in my heart. Beat a pot like it's beef with the dope. Pop person, I don't drink, I don't smoke. I'ma leave before I beat on the hoe. I'm a Z, but I'm P for sure. I been low key, she a suit. Need codeine with a boo. Now I know she cheating too, but I ain't finna look for pro.
I triple crossed them cause I seen it was prime. They try count me out, must didn't know how to count. Told her ring up and didn't know the amount. Expensive new fabrics I couldn't even pronounce. No gun polish, just stick in the pot. Hope nobody gets out of their body. Got himself hurt, he was full of that money. We ain't even wanna have to kill nobody. Riding down ocean like that's in the first. Coming red-handed, couldn't crack up the jury. Your boss is a pussy, your artist a skirt. It's a matter of time for they take all your...
All right. That's all I got. That was the number 3 track on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast, Gucci, featuring Kodak Black, King Snipe. If you haven't heard that, check that out. Number 2 track I'm in vibe with on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast. Shout out to that boy Fab featuring Davies. This track is called Back to Back. I ain't gonna lie, man. We know Fab do his thing on Instagram, but I like when he gets straight to these bars. And you know, he one of them elite bar rappers, one of them elite metaphor dudes, especially when he step in the booth. He's definitely underrated. Again, shout out to Fab, shout out to Dave East. This is the number 2 track I've been vibing with on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast. Fabulous, back to back. Check it out.
Asshole back when we used to capsule crack. Now I'm shitting on them just to pay them assholes back. Quarterback life, people wanna pass you sack. Matt Black, Maybach, I named it Matt Hasselback. White back truck, the bounce might flash you back. Still DRE, Snoop and Dre, classic track. We done schooling niggas, time to throw them tassel caps. We the tag team that never tongue wrestle back.
Ain't going back and forth with niggas on battle rap. Safari Air Max in the jungle, match with the habitat. If you need a brick stepped on, I know where some cappers at. Lost homies twisted my mental, just getting back from that. If I wrote my life in a book, I bet not a chapter whack. I don't know where your mouth been, this blunt, I'm not passing that. I've been on Remy, not shorty that make Pat relax. Trap the rap, we pull her back to back, as a matter of fact.
Back to back like Curry 17-18.
I figured Dolce and Gabbana fit better than steak greens.
Lay back in the 6 like I'm Drizzy in Toronto.
Your bird gave me the box, I ain't had to put on no blindfold.
That was the number 2 track on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast. Fab featuring Dave East back to back. This is the number 1 track I've been vibing with. Young Dolph, Love for the Streets. RP to the young legend. If you haven't heard this, check it out, man. Number 1 track on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast, episode 52. Young Dolph, Love for the Streets. Let's go.
Love the street, yeah. New AMG, foes on the feet. It's time to eat. Bone out petite. I called a freak. Where you at? They fell asleep. Fuck that bitch. Counting cheese. You know how I be. Hold up. I could give a damn about a bitch, man. You know me. Fuck her for 3 days, then dump her next week. Had your bitch rolling blunts in my passenger seat. Saved by the bells like a motherfucking screech. Came up a little different, all of my friends was the rock. Bust 10 million down and split that shit up with my partners. 50,000 all blues in my Balmain joggers. My favorite car is my Chevelle and my side bitch a doctor. Riding with my rifle, right hand on the Bible. That bitch blowjob was whack as fuck, remind me of Black China. First you get the money, then you get the power. Yeah, that bitch she fine as fuck, but she snorting powder.
That was number 1 track, man. Shout out to that boy Young Dolph. R.I.P. to Young Dolph. This track was definitely dope. Again, this is number 1 track I'm invited with this week. Young Dolph, Love for the Streets. Let's move right along. We're going to talk a little NFL playoffs, NFC Championship, AFC Championship, Cincinnati Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles versus the San Francisco 49ers. Who y'all got? First game of this weekend will be the 49ers, who are 13-4, versus the 14-3 number 1 Eagles. According to the ESPN matchup predictor, they're giving the Eagles a 60% chance to win this game. To me, that's a bit too high, especially with the 49ers having a top 3 defense and some dynamic offensive players. McCaffrey at the running back position with 700 yards. Debo, who can play receiver and running back and always looking to punish the defense. You got George Kittle, tight end mismatch for a lot of linebackers in the NFL. You also have the outstanding rookie, Mr. Irrelevant at the quarterback position, Brock Purdy, who it seems like no stage is big enough. But I gotta be fair. The Philadelphia Eagles definitely have home field advantage, and they've been showing up and dominating every team they played this year for the most part. They're 6-1 at home, and this game is at home. With all the marbles on the line, you got Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown looking to get a win. And I'm going to have to agree with the matchup predictor. I think that this final score will be 20-17. Philadelphia Eagles going on to the Super Bowl. Second game of this weekend, the Bengals 12-4 versus the Kansas City Chiefs 14-3. I have to be real with this prediction. I feel that the Bengals will definitely win this game, especially because MVP, former Super Bowl champ Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, suffered a high ankle sprain in last week playoff game. So coming in this game, it's obvious that he's not going to be 100%. I also believe that the Bengals are underrated. They have a dynamic offense, firepower. You got Joe Cool Burrow, who's the coolest quarterback left in the playoffs in the pocket and when he's under pressure. You got Jamar Chase, who can't be guarded one-on-one and always seems to have a field day, especially on the biggest games against the Chiefs. Also, you got Joe Mixon at the running back position with over 800 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's another one to keep your eye out on. Not to mention that the Bengals have beaten the Chiefs the last 3 times they met, including the playoffs last year. Yeah, Kansas City is a good team, but they don't have enough weapons on offense, I feel. If you shut down Travis Kelce, I think that the rest of the players will not be able to come up and fill that void. Overall, I think the final score in this game will be 27-17 with the Cincinnati Bengals going on to the playoffs going on to the Super Bowl, to play the Philadelphia Eagles. That's all I got this week on the Keeping It Real Frank podcast. Remember, always keep it frank. Peace.